There's something different about working security at night. You are not there to build anything. You're not there to fix anything. You're just there to watch, to sit in the dark while everyone else goes home. And sometimes you see things you wish you hadn't. These are three scary, true security guard horror stories. The first story comes from a man named Victor who worked overnight security at a distribution warehouse in Nevada. The building was massive. Rows of tall metal shelves, loading docks, and long concrete hallways that echoed with every step. At night, it was just Victor and one other guard posted in a separate section of the building. Most shifts were boring. A few patrols every hour. Check the cameras, walk the perimeter, drink bad coffee. Around 2:15 a.m. one Tuesday, Victor was in the security office watching the monitors. There were 16 camera feeds cycling on the screen. One of them showed IMASO 47, a long, narrow corridor between stacked pallets. He noticed movement. At first, he thought it was just the motion sensor adjusting to lighting changes, but then he saw it clearly. Someone walking down the aisle, slow, unhurried. Victor leaned closer to the screen. The person was wearing dark clothing, no reflective vest, no badge, and they weren't carrying anything. The warehouse had been locked since 9 p.m. Victor radioed the other guard. "Do we have anyone authorized inside right now?" "Negative," the other guard replied immediately. Victor kept watching. The figure stopped halfway down the aisle and turned directly toward the camera. Even through the grainy black and white footage, Victor felt a chill. The person didn't try to hide, didn't run, just stared straight up at the camera. Then the feed went black. Not the whole system. Just that one camera. Victor's heart started pounding. He grabbed his flashlight and headed toward aisle 47. The warehouse felt even bigger in person than it did on the monitors. Every footstep echoed. When he reached the aisle, it was empty. Completely still. He shined his light down the long corridor. Nothing. But something felt wrong. Halfway down the aisle, he noticed a ladder leaning against one of the shelves. That ladder hadn't been there earlier. He radioed again. "Did you move a ladder in 47? "No." Victor approached it slowly. The ladder was positioned under a camera mounted near the ceiling. He looked up. The camera was hanging loosely, wires exposed. It hadn't malfunctioned. It had been pulled down. He felt suddenly aware of how quiet the building was. Then, from somewhere behind him, he heard footsteps. Not running, walking. He turned quickly, shining his flashlight toward the sound. The beam cut through dust and metal shelving. No one. But the footsteps continued. Behind him again. He spun around. Nothing. The sound stopped. Victor backed up slowly toward the main walkway, never turning his back fully. When police arrived and reviewed the footage, they confirmed something that unsettled him even more. The figure in aisle 47 had no visible reflection on the polished concrete floor. The second story happened to a woman named Renee, who worked security at a small hospital in rural Georgia. Her shift ran from midnight to 8 a.m. The hospital wasn't busy overnight. A few nurses, maybe one or two patients in the ER. Part of her job was to walk the hallways every hour and make sure restricted areas were secure. Around 3:30 a.m., during one of her rounds, she passed by the pediatric wing. Most of the rooms were empty that night. As she walked past one of the doors, she heard a child laughing inside. Soft, playful. She stopped. The room was supposed to be unoccupied. She checked the clipboard at the nurse's station earlier. No pediatric patients admitted. She stepped closer to the door and listened. The laughter came again. Then the sound of something rolling across the floor, like a ball. Renee knocked lightly. "Hospital security," she called. Silence. She slowly opened the door. The room was dark except for faint hallway lights spilling in. Empty bed, empty chair, no toys. She stepped inside and turned on the light. Nothing. As she turned to leave, something brushed against her ankle. She jumped and looked down. A small red rubber ball rolled past her foot. She stared at it. The room had been empty. No windows open. No vents strong enough to move something like that. Her radio crackled suddenly. "Renee, can you confirm you're in pediatrics right now?" a nurse asked. "Yes," she replied, her voice tight. The nurse hesitated. Then who just walked past the nurse's station? Renee's blood ran cold. She stepped into the hallway immediately. It was empty. Security footage later showed a small figure walking down the pediatric hallway at 3:32 a.m., about the height of a child. But there were no admitted children that night. The third story comes from a man named Carlos, who worked as a security guard at a high-rise office building in downtown Chicago. His job was simple: monitor cameras, check the lobby, and patrol the upper floors once per shift. Most tenants left by 7 p.m. By midnight, the building was silent. One night during a severe thunderstorm, power flickered throughout the building. Emergency lights kicked in, casting everything in a dim red glow. Carlos was alone. Around 1:10 a.m., one of the elevator motion alerts triggered on his monitor. He looked at the screen. Elevator 3 had stopped at the 27th floor. No one had badged in. No one had entered the building in hours. He assumed it was a system glitch. Then the elevator camera feed activated. Inside the elevator stood a man in a soaked suit. Water dripped from his sleeves onto the floor. He wasn't moving, just standing there facing the doors. Carlos leaned closer to the monitor. The 27th floor was vacant. Completely empty office space. No active tenants. The elevator doors opened on camera. The man stepped out. Carlos watched as the hallway camera on 27 flickered on. The man walked slowly down the corridor, then stopped directly in front of Suite 2704, a unit that had been empty for over a year. The man turned his head and looked directly at the hallway camera. His eyes were wide, unblinking. Then the feed cut to static. Not a full system failure, just that floor. Carlos felt his chest tighten. Protocol said he needed to investigate. He took the elevator up. When he reached the 27th floor, the hallway was dark except for emergency lighting. Completely empty. No wet footprints on the carpet. No signs of anyone. He walked toward the Suite 2704. The door was slightly open. He was certain it had been locked earlier. He pushed it open slowly. The office was pitch black. Lightning flashed outside the windows, briefly illuminating the room. For a split second, he saw something standing near the far window. Tall, still, another flash of lightning. Nothing there. Carlos stepped inside cautiously. The air felt colder than the hallway. Then he heard it. Water dripping. He looked down. Small puddles forming on the carpet. Fresh. As if someone had just walked through, soaked. But there were no footprints leading in or out. He left the floor immediately and reviewed the footage later with building management. The strangest detail wasn't the man in the elevator. It was the timestamp. The system log showed elevator 3 never left the lobby that night. Security jobs are supposed to be about preventing crime, watching for intruders, protecting property. But sometimes you realize you're not guarding against people. You're guarding against something else. And the worst part? You're usually the only one there.